Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Bird, and I will be presenting DNA data storage. Is the future of hard drives in our blood? Well, to begin, as I'm sure you know, every day we produce tons of data, yet I don't think you truly know how much data we make. Over 400 billion, with the B, gigabytes of data are produced every day. Liking, sharing, uploading, searching, everything you do adds up. Now, 400 billion gigabytes might not mean anything to you, but like as someone who plays games a lot, like that is one of the biggest games to ever exist. Ark Survival Evolved with all of its DLC a billion times. That's a big game. Like that's a lot of data. Now, this technically means that every minute, with every share to the group chat, every upload to TikTok, every comment we leave, we add to a mountain of data that exceeds what previously existed across all of human history up to just 25 years ago, before the turn of the century. And that number only continues to grow. And I hear you asking, why does that matter? Like, yeah, it's a lot of data, but what does it mean? Like, it's just out there. So, what does that really do? Well, as you may know, not all data that we create is, saved onto a data center or stored in the cloud. Some of it is just saved onto like our local device or is like lost near immediately. But still, lots of data is used and is saved. So, unfortunately, because so much data is being saved, we are technically running out of storage. Like hard drives, yeah, that makes sense. We can look at that. They're physical things. Like it's clear to see that they're finite. But the cloud, it may not click that even the cloud is finite. There's not an infinite amount of storage there either. And not only is the fact that these data centers like have a finite amount of storage, they also take up a lot of land. Like we have a finite amount of like space on this planet to be like dedicated to these facilities, and we have a finite amount of like resources to dedicate to them as well. Luckily, nature may have presented the solution billions of years ago when we evolved DNA. Well, when the first organisms evolved DNA. As we all know, DNA is essentially like the storage medium for all life. It has everything that makes you and me, all on a single strand or, well, a double strand, I guess, of DNA. Like everything, all of our genome is on one DNA. So, even, and as you may know, but not everyone does, but well, data is stored as bits, binary bits of ones and zeros. And even the most complex data can eventually be boiled down to these ones and zeros. And as I'm sure you all know, DNA has the four bases A, T, C, G, and DNA data storage serves to like bridge that gap between binary and the bases. Now I can say that, but how exactly is it done? It's not too complicated. So since there are four bases, there's enough for all of the binary pairs. 00 can go to like A, 01 can go to T, 10 can go to G or whatever. It doesn't really matter as long as one is mapped to one. One pair is mapped to one base. Then a synthetic, then a machine would then turn that sequence into synthetic DNA, and then that synthetic DNA can then be stored like normal DNA for later use. And then it will eventually be sequenced when we want to get that information out of it so we can tell what the bases are. And then those bases can be untranslated or retranslated, however you want to say, back into its original binary form, thus allowing us to access the data. This process takes advantage of modern technology that is currently available. Like we can do this now. We can use high throughput sequencing, or we can use like Sanger method single sequencing. As long as it is sequenced, it is like applicable. And oligonucleotides are also something that we would use to make the DNA itself, with sequencing being used to like read it. And all of those things exist at current. I can't just say that DNA is going to be like an interesting solution, even though I know it is, because you don't know why. So DNA is capable of storing an immense amount of information on just 1 gram of DNA, with 215 petabytes theoretically being possible on a single gram, which, if we go back to our original example, is 500,000 copies of Ark Survival Evolved with all the DLC, which means that all of the amount of data that we produce in a day could be stored on just 2 kilograms of DNA. It also has high survivability, which means that the DNA lasts for a very long time, so it can be used for extended periods of time, like tens of thousands of years, if stored correctly. So information can last way into the future. And then to go back to the original extreme density fact, it also means that since we can fit so much in so little, we don't need as much space. We don't need to have like entire swaths of land dedicated to this thing. With the image here being this washing machine with the DNA in it, because theoretically we could store all of the information that has ever existed on this planet in a DNA storage container the size of a washing machine. Now, this isn't to say that DNA with data storage isn't without its like flaws. It obviously does. Every emerging technology has a few kinks before you can like see widespread adoption. So one of the biggest things is probably its high cost point. Like, um, but it technically means that it is possible, but it is pretty expensive. But as we know, like DNA sequencing and all of these other technologies related to it are becoming ever cheaper as we continue to advance and spend more money to like work on them, like to the point that we can spend like $200 to get our entire genome sequence before it used to be billions. So that's good. So that would eventually trickle down to this as well. There's also the like room for error. Like it is prone to making the same types of mistakes that normal DNA replication has. So there are chances for insertions, deletions, things of that nature. And it is extreme. It is extremely slow to read and write. I say extremely, but I just mean it is slower than like any electronic mediums at current. So yes, it is technically possible we could put it on there, but it would take time to like take it from the DNA to like something that we could put on a computer or like use again, which makes it basically unusable at current for like real time applications. There are also some ethical considerations like that you may have, because as with any great tool, like there are things that may be unintended consequences. So we have to be a little bit more preemptive before we do that. Like the biggest concerns like that came to my mind was, since we're working on how to like synthesize DNA better, we could technically synthesize biological weapons and like viruses, because the technology will be more like available, and somebody could say that they're like, oh yeah, we're just making like DNA data, but um no, they're over there like making weapons that can hurt people. That wouldn't be good. So they'd have to like regulate that. And then there's also the fact that synthetic DNA is basically the same as normal DNA. It functions the same, it requires the same like things. So they could be stored in the same locations. And what if they are stored in the same location? And then there's like a mix up or like an overlap, and then boom, now somebody is like, they intended to have this DNA that was from a person, but now, or like an animal or something, and now we have unintended consequences because we've accidentally taken data encoded DNA, and then that raises another problem, because who is in charge of like protecting that DNA? Who owns the data versus who owns the DNA? Like, does the company making the data own partial ownership? The DNA, I mean, have partial ownership of the data now? Like, how does that all like correlate? How does it all work? Like these are questions that we'd have to ask ourselves in a society that uses this. Despite all this, I do believe that DNA data storage is definitely a potential to be like revolutionary. Like, even if it's not used for like everyday, like long-term storage, I think it'd be really useful for like storing things like Library of Congress or just about any like all of Shakespeare's work or something like that, like all of Mozart's music, things where there's like a desire to keep it for like future generations, especially given its longevity. It would pose like a very interesting way of like having that reach the future. I think it'd be very cool. And then the pursuit for DNA data storage would definitely drive advancement. Like, I know it sounds weird, but I think a really interesting trickle down effect that could be seen from DNA data storage is like, as we work more with the oligonucleotides, we like, okay, now we can like advance medicine or like genetic medicine and things like that. It may seem silly now, but like if we're using more, like no one would have expected us to get like cooling panels for our roofs from like the technology that they used in outer space, you know? So it's just something. And then I also believe that hey, I was trying to show that this would be a sustainable solution to an unsustainable problem that we currently have with the like market for current data storage and things of that nature. So I hope that was illustrated. These are my references. If you have the time, they're like a lot of these are like very simple, especially the pizza is like it was super easy to go through. Loved it. If you're interested, I definitely recommend going there. Just learning a little bit more. Uh, but thank you for your time. I ran way over.